Hello and welcome to the Papyrus Global Television World News Update. I am Christiana Babayo. Here are the headlines. Hungary's Orbán defeated as opposition secures historic victory. 4 killed in second Turkish school shooting in 2 days. After Trump's latest broadside, Pope says world needs to hear a message of peace. Chinese man jailed after trying to smuggle 2,200 ants out of Kenya in his luggage. Remigration on Russian lessons, German far-right party promises radical measures if elected. How the US Navy could blockade Iran's ports and sweep mines from the Strait of Hormuz. North Korea says its latest test included missiles armed with cluster bomb warheads. King Charles to address joint meeting of Congress and meet privately with Trump on US state visit. Israel's new spy master is a Netanyahu aide who believed war with Iran would topple the regime. Pakistani army chief in Tehran amid bid to restart US talks. And now the news in details. Hungary has entered a new political era after Prime Minister Viktor Orbán conceded defeat following 16 years in power. The opposition Tiszta party, led by Peter Magyar, is projected to win a 2/3 parliamentary majority, according to the National Election Office, defeating Orbán's Fidesz. Speaking in Budapest, Orbán accepted the results and confirmed he had congratulated the opposition. The outcome signals a major political shift, with Magyar expected to become prime minister. European leaders, including Ursula von der Leyen, welcomed the result, describing it as a reaffirmation of Hungary's democratic direction. At least 4 people, including 3 students and a teacher, have been killed in a school shooting in southern Turkey, according to local authorities. The attack occurred at the Escalate secondary school, Turkish media reported. Officials say the attacker was also killed at the scene while several others were injured. The governor said the suspect entered 2 classrooms carrying multiple firearms and ammunition reportedly belonging to his ex-police officer father. The motive remains unclear and an investigation has been launched. It comes a day after another school shooting in the same region left 16 people injured when a former student opened fire before killing himself. Authorities say several victims remain in critical condition with treatment ongoing. Pope Leo XIV says the world needs a message of peace and unity amid growing criticism from the United States over his stance on the war in Iran. Speaking aboard a papal flight from Algeria to Cameroon, the Pope said his visit to the Great Mosque of Algiers highlighted that people of different faiths can live together in peace. He also pointed to the legacy of St. Augustine of Hippo, describing him as a key influence on his mission. The remarks come after US President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance criticized the Pope's comment on the conflict. Trump also recently launched a sharp attack on the pontiff online, escalating tensions between the Vatican and the White House. A Kenyan court has sentenced a Chinese national to a fine of 1 million shillings, about $7,700, and a 12-month jail term for attempting to smuggle live ants out of the country. Authorities say Zhang Keikun was arrested at Nairobi's main international airport last month with more than 2,200 live garden ants in his luggage. The court ruled that a strong sentence was necessary to deter rising cases of ant trafficking, which wildlife officials say is becoming a growing concern in Kenya. Prosecutors argued the ants were being exported for international markets, where collectors maintain ant colonies in controlled environments. Zhang initially denied the charges but later pleaded guilty. His lawyer says he will appeal. A co-accused Kenyan suspect remains on bail as investigations continue. Germany's far-right Alternative for Germany (AfD) has unveiled a controversial new policy agenda ahead of key state elections in Saxony-Anhalt, outlining radical changes to migration, education and foreign policy. At a party congress in Magdeburg, lead candidate Ulrich Siegmund called for consistent deportations and endorsed what the party described as a remigration, a term widely criticized for its extremist associations. The draft manifesto also proposes a major shift in migration policy, including the removal of certain refugee groups. The AfD, which has surged to around 40% in regional polls, is positioning itself as a major challenger to Germany's governing coalition, led by Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The party also calls for closer ties with Russia, including lifting sanctions and expanding Russian language education. Critics warn the proposals signal a sharp departure from mainstream European policy direction. The United States Navy has been ordered to prepare for expanded operations targeting Iran's maritime activity in the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global energy corridor. According to President Donald Trump, the mission includes intercepting vessels accused of paying fees to Iran and increasing pressure on Tehran's oil revenues during the ongoing conflict. U.S. Central Command says 2 guided missile destroyers have already entered the strait as part of early mine-swapping preparations aimed at clearing any naval mines that could disrupt shipping. The operation marks a shift in U.S. military focus from airstrikes to high-risk naval enforcement. Military experts say a blockade involves enforcing maritime restrictions to limit an adversary's trade and revenue. However, under international law, such actions must be declared proportionate and not target civilian populations or neutral shipping lanes. The situation continues to escalate tensions in the region. North Korea says its latest series of weapon tests included ballistic missiles equipped with cluster bomb warheads, marking a further escalation in its military capabilities. According to state media, the tests were conducted over 3 days starting Monday and involved a range of systems, including anti-aircraft weapons, electromagnetic warfare technology, and so-called carbon fiber bombs. The announcement comes after South Korea's military reported detecting multiple missile launches from North Korea's eastern coast in 2 separate rounds over a 2-day period. Pyongyang says the exercises are aimed at strengthening its nuclear-capable forces, which it continues to develop in response to what it describes as threat from South Korea and its allies. Regional tensions remain high, with analysts warning that the latest tests signal North Korea's ongoing push to advance more sophisticated and diversified strike capabilities amid stalled diplomatic talks with Washington and Seoul. We will now take a short break and the news will continue when we come back.
Paglogma 2026. The Papyrus Global launches new series starting Tuesday, 3rd March 2026. The conversation starts now across Africa. Our languages may differ, our borders may separate us, but our struggles bear semblance. Communities seeking opportunities, youth demanding inclusion, citizens calling for transparency. These are realities that unite us. Africa is united by a common challenge and a common responsibility, building resilient, inclusive, and sustainable communities. To set this conversation in motion, the Papyrus Global is launching the pre-conference live series, Governance That Touches Lives. Let's start where it matters the most.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue. Britain's King Charles III is set to address a joint meeting of the US Congress and hold private talks with President Donald Trump during a state visit to the United States later this month, Buckingham Palace has announced. The visit, scheduled from April 27 to 30th, will see King Charles and Queen Camilla travel to Washington, New York, and Virginia as part of events marking the 250th anniversary of US independence. In Washington, the King and Queen will be formally welcomed, attend a state banquet, and meet privately with President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump. King Charles is also expected to become only the second British monarch to address Congress following Queen Elizabeth II in 1991. The visit comes amid diplomatic tensions, but officials say it is focused on strengthening historic UK-US ties across security, culture, and economic cooperation. Israel's incoming intelligence chief is at the center of reassessment of expectations about the war with Iran, according to Israeli sources familiar with internal consultations. Roman Goffman, currently military secretary to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is said to become director of the Mossad in June. He reportedly believed early in the conflict that sustained military pressure could trigger the collapse of Iran's government. However, officials now say the assessment has not been realized more than 40 days into the fighting. Government will replace current Mossad chief David Barnea, who also supported the view that the war could stabilize Tehran's leadership. Despite significant strikes to Iranian infrastructure, the country's leadership remains intact and firmly in control. Barnea has since said Israel's objectives in Iran remain incomplete, stressing that the campaign will only be successful if the current regime is ultimately replaced. Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir has arrived in Tehran for high-level talks aimed at restarting negotiations between Iran and the United States, according to officials involved in the mediation effort. The visit comes as tensions remain high in the region, with Iran warning it could extend restrictions beyond the Gulf and the Sea of Oman to the Red Sea if a U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports continues. U.S. Central Command says no ships have entered or left Iranian ports in the past 48 hours and claims 9 vessels have turned back under U.S. instructions. That contradicts Iranian reports of tanker movements through the Strait of Hormuz. Diplomatic efforts are continuing through Pakistan, which says it is relaying messages between Tehran and Washington. Mediators are focusing on nuclear issues, maritime access, and wartime compensation as a fragile ceasefire edges towards its expiry. And that brings us to the end of today's Africa News Update. A recap of our headlines before we go. Hungary's Orbán defeated as opposition secures historic victory. 4 killed in second Turkish school shooting in 2 days. After Trump's latest broadside, Pope says world needs to hear a message of peace. Chinese man jailed after trying to smuggle 2,200 ants out of Kenya in his luggage. For continuous coverage on breaking developments, stay connected with the Papyrus Global Television at papyrusdaily.com. I am your host, Christiana Babayo. Thank you for watching. Do have a safe and informed day.